Hello everyone, I'm going to show you how to basically illustrate a lightsaber hilt, let's put the blade on it too, using Affinity Designer 2. Now I'm going to make this really quick and really fast, so I'll try to describe what I'm doing as we go along. The areas that you are going to be in is the shaped tool, and you're going to be getting into these as well. So what we're going to start off with is a rounded rectangle, and we're going to go ahead and just get the basic shape. I'd say right around here. I'm not going to be too picky, but I am going to be picky on getting it centered. And I'm going to go ahead and change the fill color to more of a gray, sort of maybe a little bit of a charcoal gray. Okay, so that's the main part of the hilt. I'm going to zoom in on the canvas so I can see a little bit more of what I'm doing. And from here, I'm going to go ahead and get a trapezoid tool. I'm going to go ahead and do this. And that's the thing, I think, that if you're just starting off and designing like I'm doing, need to break down the shapes that we're using as references so they can make a little bit more sense to us. Because a lot of times we look at the final shapes and we're like, how do we create it? But in any case, that's what we're going to do. Now, it's important that whenever we do the trapezoid up at the very top, we're going to go ahead and put this behind the main hilt, and I'm going to show you why we do that in just a little bit. And it's going to be important in ordering whenever you want to do your own hilts. Again, we're going to go ahead and zoom in a little bit more. Whoops. And we are going to add a basic rectangle. I'm going to make it so that it fits right on top, and I'm going to give this a copperish color, sort of like that. That'll work. Okay, let's go ahead and zoom in because I want to make sure that everything is nice and flush where I want things to be. Okay, that looks good. Let's bring this down maybe a little bit more. There we go. Now it's flush with it. Okay, so at this point we can add rings to it, or I can add an upside down trapezoid. I think I'm going to go ahead and do that. And let's do this. Let's go ahead and move this to where it's nice and centered and locked. And I'm going to use the horizontal flip, and I'm going to flip it over, and I'm going to go ahead and make this an ash gray as well. I'm going to move this down on top, holding down the shift key so that it goes right in where it's supposed to. Now you can leave it like this, or you can adjust the nodes so that it'll go right into the edges here. I'm going to do that, so I'm going to break into curves or convert to curves, and then I'm going to use my node tool, and I'm really going to start zooming in on the canvas here, or on the canvas here. Let's go back up, right there, and right here. Now, on this part, I'm going to add some rings to the copper portion of it. So I'm going to go back here, and we're going to add the rounded triangle. And we're going to make the fill black once we get there. And something like this. But I want to, let's see, there's nothing in my nodes here that can do that. Okay. Zoom in, make sure I can see. I want to make these very, very round. Like about that. Sort of like those old style ray guns if you're into it. That looks good. And we're going to make this black. Okay. And we're going to center this up. And I know that there are shortcuts of using movements and mouse and things like that. I just prefer the mouse. That's my workflow. Okay. So now I'm going to move this up just a little closer. Say right about there. That'll work. Now I'm going to add more, but I'm not going to do that at this point. And I'll show you why later on. So what we're going to do down here, zoom out a little bit so we can see a little bit more. There we go. Pretty big hilt. Again, it's you can make it however you want. I'm going to go ahead and draw a circle. That'll be fine for this tutorial. Let's have it right there, and let's make that red a little darker. Now we're going to add the bottoms to all of these things. Let's go ahead and I'm going to make this off to the side. Okay. And yeah, I'm going to make them black. Okay, I'm going to zoom in on the canvas here. And I'm going to move these towards the center. I'm going to make this one dead center of this. That looks good. Now I'm going to go ahead and do a copy and paste since it's highlighted. I'm holding down the shift key and I'm going to move this off to the side. That looks good. I'm going to do the same thing with this, copy and paste, holding down the shift key and moving this off to the side. Right about there. Now, do the exact opposite. We're going to move these off to the left. Right there. And it's important that you have your snap tool enabled so that everything locks into place and keeps it nice and symmetrical. That looks good. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and zoom out. Now I did this intentionally because this looks like junk. It really does. And I understand that when we're starting off and we look at 2D stuff, it looks like garbage because this doesn't look like a lightsaber hilt unless you're in a Rick and Morty adventure. But I want it to look like one. This is where the whole thing with 3D effects and beveling and all this stuff comes in. Now, I am wanting to make more rings up here go all the way down, but I purposely left it blank. Now, what I should have done, and I did this intentionally, is I should have just left this as one without doing a copy and paste, but I'm going to show you why you want to make sure you get the effects on things that are going to be repeated. Otherwise, you're going to be doing more work. So this is what we're going to do. I'm going to go up on the canvas and we're going to go ahead and zoom in here. Now these rings, I want them to have a 3D effect and I want them to have some shine, sort of like they're polished plastic or whatever metal you want to think of it in the Star Wars universe. So I'm going to tap on my effects. We're going to go 3D. Check that. And I want it to have enough to where it looks rounded but not flat like that. So I'd say that looks good. Now it's important. Do not adjust this because we're going to be doing 3D effects on all of this. Do not adjust the 45 degree stuff. You have to make it universal, and I'm going to show you why that's important. So what we're going to do is we're going to close. I'm going to go ahead and copy this layer and paste it. And I'm going to hold down the shift key and move it down. Right about here. We're going to copy, paste, hold down the shift, and move it down. Do the same thing all throughout this stuff until you get to where, well, at least in this lightsaber instance, where we want it to be. And again, snapping tool must be on. That looks good enough for me. Okay. We're going to do the main hilt. So I'm going to do that. And you can keep your 3D deal open if you want. 3D. And we want it to be somewhere, yeah, we want it to be round. Okay. Again, keeping that fine, but you might want to play with the shininess factor of it. So I want this to be more like polished metal. Now you can change it to whatever you want, but I want it to be a little bit more of a dull finish on it and have maybe a little bit more there. So we're going to zoom out. So it's going to look like that. So now we have the button. So what we're going to do, zoom in on here. That looks pretty oblong. There, that looks a little better. Okay, now I'm going to do the effects. Move my canvas over. And we're going to do a bevel first on the button. Now, turn this to 45. And then we're going to go ahead and give this a 3D effect on the button as well. And I want the radius to be a little bit more. It's just going to depend upon what you're wanting to do. But that's going to be a good enough button start right there. More of a rounded button. If you wanted to do the radius a little bit flatter to make it look more of a flat, you know what, I kind of like that better. That looks good. So let's take the sepulcher. Let's play around with that. No, that doesn't work. Let's play around with the shininess. Maybe not as dull as shiny. That's good. That looks good. So now we're going to go ahead and hit all of these. Now see, this is the thing. If you run into this situation where you have done this and you think, oh no, I'm going to have to do the 3D effects on all of them, just choose your center, get this working to where you want it to be. We want it to be a little bit flat, and again, we want the shininess. Nope, that's a little bit too much. Let's play around with this. That looks good for this hilt. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure that this is highlighted to the 3D effect that I want. And I'm going to copy. I'm going to highlight my other, and this is important, paste effects. Paste effects. And again, you can get into adjusting where the whole thing goes, where the light is coming from. For me, this works. But let's say we wanted to go ahead and adjust where the light is. We'll go ahead and do that here. I don't like it. I think I'll just keep it the same. Now, this is important, and this is the thing that we're going to have to keep in mind. And I should have done this throughout the whole thing. You want to make sure that when you have your effects, that you select the scale with shape option that's there. We're going to go back and we're going to do this on all of them. Scale, scale. And if you paste the effects and you select that once, it's going to select that for the whole thing. I'm going to select the hilt, Do the same thing there. Select the button and scale. I'm going to select these rings, each one of them, scale. And you may do the same thing too. If you mess up, not a problem. This is part of the learning process. I should have kept better track. Okay, scale, scale, and scale, and we'll do that next time whenever we come up. Now, remember the trapezoid that we had at the very beginning there, and we put it behind this? This is where this is going to come into play. So we're going to do 3D. We're going to go ahead and do, now you can make it so that it's like this, or a little bit more flat. I prefer that. I'll take the shininess down a little bit, and that make it a little bit more dull. Now the very top, I want that to be there as well, but I want it to have a little bit more of a flat, like the trapezoid. That looks all right. Let's add a little bit more. Let's do that. That's good. And the copper. I'm going to make that a 3D object. We're going to give that a little bit more of a tube type of feel to it. Not so much that it's completely overwhelming. And yeah, let's have that there. Make it a little bit more shiny. Okay. Let's back up. Now, looks a lot better now that it's in the that it's out of the 2D and a little bit more 3D. Now you can go ahead and add texture to the hilt, to the button. You can add fingerprint smudges. You can chip some of these things. I'm just giving you the bare bones basic of what this lightsaber hilt will look like. Now here's the thing, and this is why it's important for you to make sure that it's at the same angle, your light source is at the same angle with regard to beveling, with regard to 3D, all of that stuff. And I'm going to show you. What we're going to do now is we're going to select everything, and I'm going to go ahead and arrange them in a group. We're going to call Lightsaber Hilt. Oops. Okay. Now, this is a neat thing. You can save this and use it as an asset later on. Now I want you to watch. I'm going to grab the top and I'm going to twirl it. This is a nice thing with Affinity Designer. Notice that while I'm moving this, all the 3D lighting effects are still working. All of them. They will work no matter how you turn it. This only works within Affinity Designer. See how the light source is moving along with all of the things and the shadows that are there? All of these things are here. This is why it's important for you to make it into a group. Now, this will not work if you combine them into a group and then apply the 3D effects to the whole thing. Otherwise, it'll just be a flat washout. What you have to do is you have to go over each little shape that you have made and turn it into a 3D object and then put it there. Now you can save this as a project and use it, but you want to make sure that you have this at a ratio that is large enough that if you're working on a larger canvas, you can enlarge this asset, this lightsaber hilt, to make it look like something that looks well detailed instead of pixelated out, because once you export it, as well as using a 3D effect or bevel effects, any of the effects, it turns this image into a raster image. So if you try to make it smaller, or try to make it larger, it's going to pixelate out. But this is how you draw or create lightsaber hilts. Just look at different ones, get inspired by them, and just start arranging your different shapes together and drawing new ones. I mean, you can make all these things, and don't get discouraged whenever it doesn't look right, especially the beginning phases. I know that I was like that, and this is how you do it. It's really simple, and you can do it very quickly. And I hope this helps somebody. Later.